Hello, all. Very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whichever time zone you are currently. Um, and thanks. Before to start with the presentation, I would like to say thanks to InfoSec giving me this platform to deliver this session. So today I'm going to talk on overview of payment card industry data security standard. So a little bit about me. Um, myself, Archana Kamat. I have total 10 years of experience in information security with a wide range of skill set and industry verticals. I have an extensive experience in designing, implementing, and managing security solutions. And I believe everyone should experience both the side of coins, means the process experience as well as the uh, technical and experience, knowledge, information in information security. And I was fortunate, one of them, to get experience because it came across on my way. So it can be anything like securing architecture reviews, web application security, architecture implementation, maintaining ISO 27001, PCI DSS, HIPAA, etc. Those are count as a regulatory compliance standards. So this is about I have been experienced both the side of coins, like technical plus process. I'm currently working as a principal security and privacy analyst with SaaS compliance team in Oracle, Burlington, Massachusetts, USA. There, my role is to do more on audit perspectives like SOC, PCI DSS, HIPAA. Uh, I'm I'm responsible to do reviews, audit reviews, readiness assessments for all the cloud customers for Oracle. Now, you can see that I'm currently working on the process side of the coin. You can definitely reach me via social networking channels, LinkedIn, or the Twitter. The links are given below. Um, Agenda for the today's session, I will be covering a little bit about a PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard Overview, and its little bit history. We will also try to understand the payment industry terminologies and what it means to PCI DSS, and try to understand what is cardholder data. Just I'll show you some picturized cardholder data, what we care as a PCI DSS compliance. And then we'll discuss about high-level PCI DSS requirements. When we say we need to do an audit and assessment, those PCI DSS requirements are very much required. And then I will text your questions offline because it's a live stream. You can post your questions on the Gmail ID I have posted on the subsequent slides. Okay, let's move on the overview of PCI DSS. So let's try to understand first a PCI Security Standards Council, which is also called as a PCI SSC. That's an independent industry standard body founded by the multinational card brands in 2004. So when I'm saying a multinational card brands, is like American Express, Discover, JCB, MasterCard, and Visa. They are providing oversight of the development and the management of the PCI security standards on a global basis. Before joining the forces, each company had internal security programs to combat credit card frauds and breaches. That's why they formed Payment Card Industry Security Standard Council. This Payment Card Security Standard Council helped them to establish a common standard. Additionally, they needed to solve interoperability of problems of individual programs. So they designed the PCI DSS standard. And the aim, when this PCI data security standard was born, its aim is to reduce the credit card fraud and to give guidance for controls around the cardholder data. To this day, the PCI Council acts as a governing body for the PCI standard. So whatever the compliance rules and the policies and if there is increase in the standard or addition in the standard that come from the PCI Council. PCI DSS is considered as a security control framework, as opposed to the program we have like ISO 27001. And for risk, we have NIST and other governance framework like COBIT, COSO, and ISO 27002. So there's a quite differentiation between that. And there are many other PCI standards, but this data security standard is our primary focus for this presentation. So I'm not going to oversee all the PCI standards, which is required for the business, corporate, commercial, and they have been used for the different means and the purposes. But our goal is for the presentation, which is focused on the data security standard. So that means include covering which makes a payment application, end-to-end encryption solutions, then hardware manufacturers who create a pin pad devices that will not be in a scope for discussion today. I will also give you the PCI DSS, the applicability of the PCI DSS. The PCI DSS is applicable to any entity that accepts, processes, stores, or transmits cardholder data, including merchants and the service providers. We'll come towards merchants and service providers when we come towards next slides during the terminology section. So when I'm saying CHD is a card order data, which has a full primary account number, PAN, which is bare minimum, and it also include expiration date, service code, and the name. PCI DSS standard has been through many iterations since version 1.0, which was developed in 2004. And major updates was done and were released in October 2010, which is version 2.0. And in 2013, it came with version 3.0. And now the most recent versions we have, that's version 3.2.1, which came in May 2018. Now there is a process, they are coming with version 4.0, which is planned in coming in mid 2012. And they are very much focused on how business will be able to achieve the compliance independently. And when we talk about the PCI SSE functions, that also help you to develop and maintain the security standards, define validation requirements for qualified security assessors, that is QSA, and approved scanning vendors. So this approved scanning vendors is used for external scanning, external vulnerability scan. So there are approved scanning vendors. You have to choose them in your organization, to provide the attestation reports. So Qualys is one of the ASV. And then conduct quality assurance reviews of QSA firms who execute the PCI assessment. And this is how the PCI SSE function is worked. And they help to provide the PCI DSS standard to the organization and ensure that we are aligned with the requirement. Okay, coming to the payment plan compliance and enforcement. So this is PCI is not regulated and directed by the federal or state law. It's not like regulatory compliance, or maybe it's not a law which you need to abide with. But it comes with a contractual regulation, or maybe a contractual definition between the merchants and their acquirers. So that's why each payment brand develops and maintains its own PCI DSS compliance program. And that compliance program is based on their risk management practices and the policies. So this risk management policies includes the tracking and enforcement of PCI DSS standardization of the organization. If that organization help to process, transmits, and accepts the CHD, that is credit card holder data. So the tracking and enforcement has been done by this PCI SSE functions. They also come up with penalties, fees, and there's a strict compliance deadlines they have to follow. Like some of the organization have requirement to do this compliance on an annual basis and maintain those compliance. And if we don't do that, then there will be a penalties and fees that we have to incur. The organization have to incur. Then there is a validation process they define. That validation process, it's help you to validate the requirements. So PCI SSC will also provide the level 1, level 2, level 3 validation process. And that validation process and the criteria has been defined. The volume of the transaction has been done with that cards. So that card can be a merchant or the service provider. That can be any other entity. They also help to provide how you can respond to if there is a data breaches or data compromise, how you should be responding such kind of incidents when it come across the payment brand compliance. Now coming to payment terminology, payment industry terminologies, I would like you to concentrate first the cardholder. So these are the actors in the payment industry: cardholder, issuer, merchant service providers, acquirer, and payment brands. So the cardholder. Cardholder is like a customer purchasing goods either as a card present or card not present transaction, and they receives the payment card and bills from the issuer. Now come to the issuer, who is acting as a consumer bank. Issuer is like a bank, which I said as a consumer bank, or any other organization issuing a payment card on behalf of the payment brand. For example, MasterCard and Visa. And payment brand issuing, sometimes, payment brand is also issue a payment card directly. So for example, MX, Discover, JCB, they issue their own payment card. But in case of MasterCard and Visa, it is either issued by the bank or other organization who is issuing the payment card. So that's the definition of issuer. Who is merchant in this payment terminology? So the merchant is nothing but the organization. It's kind of an organization who is accepting the payment card for payment during the purchase. So now coming to the acquirer, so that you can understand a little bit about how merchant works. So acquirer is also called as a merchant bank. So it's a kind of a bank or entity the merchant uses to process their payment card transaction, receive authorization request from merchant, and forward to issuer for approval. And they provides a clear authorization, then how the clearing has been done, and settlement services been done to the merchant. That's why sometimes acquirer is also called as a merchant bank. They can be a payment brand, for example, MX, Discover, JCB, because these are the payment brand who actually issues your payment card directly. They are not via bank or any other organization. But acquirer can never be Visa or MasterCard. Next slide. So now try to understand what is cardholder data. So as you see in the screenshot, what is cardholder data includes and what is called as a sensitive authentication data and what it includes. So PCI DSS is designated to protect cardholders' sensitive information by ensuring the processes, people, and system that access the data have adequate control around their usage. So in the screenshot, you see that a cardholder data and sensitive authentication data. So that cardholder data includes primary account number, cardholder name, expiration date, service code. And in the sensitive authentication data, it includes full track data, such as magnetic stripe data or the equivalent data contained on chip. Then CVC, CVV code, service code, and pins or pin blocks. So those two types are very much important. And if you have any of those, that means you are carrying a payment data or cardholder data, which is sensitive. The PAN, which is showed in a cardholder data, is the critical element associated with the cardholder data. If the cardholder name, service code, and the expiration data are stored, processed, or transmitted with the PAN, or are existing there in the cardholder data environment, which is also called as a CDE, they must be guarded in accordance with the PCI DSS requirements. And this cardholder data and sensitive authentication data loss can occur in multiple areas and in numerous scenarios, including compromised card reader. There might be a compromised point of sale systems. So point of sale systems is acting as a service provider here. Then there is a storage networks, which is used to connect those systems, which get compromised sometimes. Then there's a databases. A database can also be an actor. If it is not encrypted, then online portals is actually used to purchase something. And we try to provide all the card data information or credit card data information to purchase something. And that portal is compromised. Wireless router, if the stroke points are not being secured with the high definite algorithms or encryption algorithms. And there are, when you go to the ATM and try to take the money, there might be an hidden cameras or the wiretaps, which can invest that's invest electronic methods nowadays to capture or to thieve, to grab the credit card information. So I just let you know, tell you that interesting fact, although the PCI DSS permits cardholder data storage, sensitive authentication data storage is not allowed even if it is encrypted. So it permits the cardholder data storage, but it will not allow you the sensitive authentication data storage even if it is encrypted. Next slide. Okay. Now we will just briefly see the PCI DSS requirements. So there are 12 requirements and the goals. So we will just look at briefly what each requirements required and what potentially would like to tell you to implement those in your organization. The first requirement, the first goal is build and maintain secure network and systems. So this first two requirements detail how firewall should be implemented, how it is maintained and managed. So little bit about the first requirement: install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect cardholder data. Firewalls are a vital component of any computer network and are the first line of defense for internet traffic. A firewall identifies all network traffic and blocks any transmission that don't meet the business specific security criteria. All systems must be protected from the unauthorized access and from untrusted networks, regardless of the method of entry. Okay. It can be anything like internet, e-commerce, employee internet access, employee email access, business to business connection, or wireless networks. Second requirement is do not use vendor supply defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. So criminals and data thieves use vendor default passwords and default settings to compromise the systems. So ensure that when you install something, it should not have the default vendor supply default password. Like for example, you're installing WebLogic and you try to just keep the username password as WebLogic at WebLogic. When you install some Cisco devices, you tend to keep the vendor supply default passwords like Cisco. That should be necessarily avoided. If it is critical and important to change vendor supply default password settings or remove and disable unnecessary default accounts before introducing the new systems into your environment. Coming to the second goal, that's protect cardholder data. So it covers the third and fourth requirements to detail how to protect the cardholder data during processing and transmit it and storage. So third requirements is like protect stored cardholder data. So there are many methods of protecting your client sensitive data. It can be an encryption, truncation, masking, and hashing, etc. Can each become a critical component of your business cardholder data protection plan. Additionally, don't store cardholder data unless necessary and don't send unprotected information via email. The fourth requirement talks about encrypt transmission of cardholder data across open and public network. Cardholder sensitive data and authentication information must be encrypted during transmission over open and public networks. Might be you're transmitting something over SSL that should be encrypted. If you are dealing with the CHD environment, that is credit card holders environments. And these networks are targeted by individuals who exploit the open, visible nature of the network to gain unauthorized system access. So you can easily get penetrated by those attackers. The next goal is a maintain and vulnerability management program. So it covers our fifth and sixth requirements involve developing, maintaining, protecting all in scope payment systems with vulnerability management plan to ensure any existing vulnerabilities are addressed and remediated. So it's not just, organization have to just complete the vulnerability scanning. PCI does require if the CHD environments have have been done with the vulnerability scan, they have to have remediated within the stipulated time. It cannot wait till more than a year or more than a 6 months of time to get those remediation done. So it has to be remediated if you need to get the PCI DSS certification, or you have to get the compliant by the PCI SSC compliance program. So it has the fifth requirements: protect all system against malware and regularly update antivirus softwares or programs. Malware is malicious software that can be introduced into your network during any typical business activity, such as employee email, internet usage, maybe using personal employees' computers, cell phones, or by utilizing an infected storage devices such as USB drive. Antivirus software must be installed and operating on all the business systems to protect your client's environment. The security software must be correctly configured and maintained, as there are constantly evolving malicious software threats found day by day. So that means your antivirus should get an updates on a regular basis, and if it is a CHD environment, then you have to take care and ensure that you are doing periodic checks on your antivirus software installed on those environments. The another requirement is develop and maintain secure systems and applications. So this includes a use of security vulnerabilities in your systems and application to gain privileged access to cardholder sensitive data. So these security vulnerabilities are typically remediated through the application of security patches that was typically configured by your vendor and must be installed by whoever manages those systems. So there might be some configuration errors like SSL server configuration error, SSH key is not encrypted properly, or they're not using a proper algorithm. So those are the configuration or the misconfiguration issues can be handled by internal administrators, system administrators. So it is required for all applications and systems to have appropriate current software patches to protect against the exploitation of compromise of cardholder data. Let's move on. The another goal is implement strong access control measure. So it covers our 7th and 8th requirements, which requires access and access points to impact systems. To ensure data to be secure and the access to be commensurate with the role of resources, all access must be restricted to only authorized resources and includes the system access and access to the physical areas. So it will, it is beneficial that you implement least privilege policies on those important assets of your systems, which is called as a CHD environment. Let's move on the requiremements, so it will give you more information. Restrict access to the cardholder data by business need to know. So that's why it comes to a least privilege access, that this is a developer, he should have this X access. He is an administrator, he should have X access. So access to data should be granted on need to know basis. So systems and processes must be in place to ensure limited access. Need to know dictates that access is granted only at the minimum level and only if needed in order to perform the job responsibilities. Another requirement is like identify and authenticate access to the system component. It is imperative to assign a unique identification set of credentials to each person with access to the sensitive information. This ensures that each individual is solely accountable for his or her action and that a level of traceability is available. And then come across a restrict physical access to the cardholder data. So physical access to all data system should be restricted. Next slides. Okay, coming to the next goal is regularly monitor and test network. That's completely different from what we saw in the vulnerability management goal. It covers our 9th and 10th requirement, which including tracking and monitoring all access to the network resources and cardholder data, including a regular testing of control, systems, and the processes. So how you will do that? So it tells you more about the requirement. The requirement is track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. So how we should be doing that? So we have a log files, system traces, or any tool enable that tracks the access of sensitive data, and it is critical in preventing, detecting, and minimizing the data breach. So might be an SIEM tool that will help you to track the security incidents. There might be an IDS, network tabs, IPS installed who can not just track, prevent, and also help you to prevent and detect the data breach. The availability of the logs enables tracking, alerting, and analysis when an intrusion occurs. So it is almost impossible to identify and diagnose a breach without the system logs. So ensure that your organization is logging and logging is enabled and monitoring those system logs to find out the data breach. And the another requirement which can help you to build this goal is regularly test security systems and processes. So the system vulnerabilities are constantly being discovered. So, and as such, all systems and processes and software should be tested. So it's not just your CHD has to be tested as a vulnerability scan. Your system security systems and the processes should be regularly tested, maybe regularly assessed for this particular control. Ensure that you have a port matrix as a result of this, and you have been doing those reviews. Ensure that the ports which is actually required by an organization or the business should be added into the port matrix, and there's a clear business justification is maintained, and your organization is accepting the risk to having those ports open. So these are regular monitoring checks example that you have to carry to ensure that you are regularly monitoring and testing the networks. The another example will be a firewall rule set, which you have to do maybe annually or biannually to ensure that the traffic which is maintained by this firewall is monitored properly for minimizing the data breach. The last goal of this PCI DSS requirement is maintain an information security policy. So your client must implement and maintain a policy that addresses information security for all the personnel. So it is just talking about high level information security policy and how you maintain and help them to communicate to all the personnel when new employee joins your organization, how that is getting communicated, how the users are getting trained to handle the CHD environment if they are going to work on the CHD environment. So it covers a requirement, 12 requirement, the last requirement, maintain a policy that addresses information security for all the person. A strong PCI DSS compliant security policy secures your PCI DSS code infrastructure, the scoped infrastructure, and the sets of standards for what is expected of your employees. So it is critical to ensure every employee understands what is expected of him or her regarding the security of your client's sensitive data. All personnel should be aware of the data sensitivity and the individual and group responsibilities to protecting them. So they need to understand if it is CHD or they're not storing and processing and transmitting as is. So they should ensure that they're following the policy and addresses as per the organization need. Let me know if you have any questions and would like to know more about PCI DSS, how it get implemented, how organization gets compliant, because my presentation is it's at the higher level. So if you want to understand each level of merchant and service providers, how they get validated by the PCI DSS, and if you want to also understand the scenario, if you have a scenario and not understanding if the PCI DSS is really applicable or not, you can please pose these questions or the queries to me via email, because this is a streaming YouTube channel, and then I can get back to you with the answers and the responses. Thank you.